Hey folks, Rob Daniels here for the movie, TV, and video game soundtrack program Visions in Sound. I can be found every Saturday morning, 12 to 2 a.m. on Mix 98.5, and if you miss the show, which, hey, does happen, you can also find me on my website, visionsinsound.ca. Well, here we are. I've got another wonderful little soundtrack for you, but with a bit of sad news to start. We've lost two really fantastic composers in the last little bit, Lalo Schifrin being one, and Mark Snow, who passed away at 78. And that one hits hardest because, I actually had a chance to speak to both composers. I interviewed them at one point. But Mark hits the hardest because I really loved his X-Files music. So I was doing a bit of research, and over the years, when you collect certain things, you fall into certain patterns when you talk about composers. And one of the composers that I would always get, like, hands down, no problem, regardless of what it was, if it was something new that I didn't have, I would definitely pick it up. That was Jerry Goldsmith. Well, later that became other composers, other more not as well-known composers. Now, when I say not as well-known, Mark Snow is hardly not as well-known, but his work spans a whole, like, the decades of, like, T.J. Hooker and all of these wonderful television themes that he came up with. But then I stumbled across a particular 1994 miniseries. Now, this was a year after he had started at the X-Files. So when I heard this soundtrack, I was like, this is Mark Snow? Like, when I first heard him in 1993, I thought all he did was these electronic scores. But to hear this, I was absolutely floored. And this is music from a miniseries called Oldest Living Confederate Widow Tells All. This is a fantastic score, and it hits you from the very beginning. Have a listen. So there's that. You've got some wonderful, just a wonderful scoring going on here for a mini series, and there's definitely there's such a difference between his X-Files music as opposed to to this, and that's what struck me about this, is that, I mean, while its composers are hired to do these things, it's always amazing to know that they can do these things. And Mark Snow really proves it here. I've never seen the miniseries. I've only seen it in pictures and maybe a little bit of video here and there. But I know it has Donald Sutherland's in it. And it was one of the projects he worked on. But to know that Mark Snow did the music for this is really cool. And probably it's one of my favorite of his non-X-Files scores. So have a listen. There's some other really great stuff on here. Just, like I said, if you can find it, go out and get it. It's amazing. Have a listen. So yeah, some fantastic stuff here from another one of the greats that we've lost just recently. And, you know, like I said, when I had a chance to speak to Mark, and I spoke to him twice, he was always a pleasure to speak to. He was one of my first really major interviews. I had done a lot of Canadian composers up to that point, but Mark, there was Joe Harnell and then there was Mark Snow. And Mark Snow was my first really big person that I really admired interview. And his music just shows. And it comes through in Oldest Living Confederate Widow Tells All. And if you haven't heard this score, I highly recommend that you go out and find it. Because it is one of those scores that you'll go, first of all, you'll go, this is Mark Snow? And second of all, you'll go, this is really good. So, with that in mind, I will say this. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I am doing really well. By the way, I need to throw this out here while I have a moment. And I'm just going to look this up real briefly. At last count, my V the Final Battle video is well over 1,000 views. Now that's amazing. 1,000 views. And this is from a video that was done 3 months ago. And I've rarely had no other videos on my channel have reached the heights of this video, and I have no idea why. It's 1,065 or something like that at last count. So there's that. And for me, that's I'm what the heck is this all about? But yeah, for me, it's just one of those things that just hits me, and I'm going, YouTube, what's up with you guys? So obviously people are watching this, which is just amazing to me. And I'm always impressed that, like, of all my videos that I've done, this one's over 1,000 views. Now, when it reaches over 2,000 views, then I'm going to be like, that's amazing, even more amazing. But in this case, 1,000 views is pretty damn cool. So like I said, if you're interested in any of the film, television, or video game music that I do play, you can catch me every week on Visions in Sound, 12 to 2 a.m. every Saturday morning on Mix 98.5. And if you miss a show, which, hey, does happen, you can catch me on visionsinsound.ca. I'm on Blue Sky these days at visionsinsound.bluesky.social. You can also try me on Good Pods, a downloadable app for your phone or other type devices, and you can also try any of the other podcatchers out there, including the likes of Apple Music. Now, folks, I realize it's a tough time right now. We've just lost some friends in the soundtrack biz. We've also lost Michael Madsen, and it's gonna be a tough time right now. So if you're having problems, please call 911 for immediate help. Dial or text 988 for the Suicide Crisis Helpline. You can also try 1-844-HERE247 or HERE247.ca. They all offer ways of getting help if you or someone you know is suffering from mental health issues. Well, that's all for this time, folks. I will go with my regular one next week, but I just wanted to get this one out here because, we just lost Mark Snow, and I wanted to make sure that, people knew him for more than just his work on the X-Files, and that Oldest Living Confederate Widow Tells All is an amazing score, and have a listen to it. So with that in mind, have yourself a great day. Bye for now. We'll talk to you soon.
It was the Civil War. And even for its time, it was an unconventional alliance.
May I borrow your daughter here?
Doesn't matter. The most controlling interest in the world. Samuel is older than we are.
But through strife, struggle,
have to pull out the lead and bone in pieces,
and tragedy,
This is a real pistol?
it became a love affair to last a lifetime. Academy Award nominee Diane Lane of Unfaithful and Under the Tuscan Sun, Golden Globe winner Donald Sutherland of Cold Mountain and The Italian Job, Academy Award nominee Cicely Tyson, and Academy Award nominee Anne Bancroft star in The Oldest Living Confederate Widow Tells All.